There has been a contagion of cowardice in Congress. That's what California Congressman Adam Schiff told his constituents in Pasadena yesterday in a meeting about gun violence. In his New York Times column today, Paul Krugman noted, quote, Republicans have blocked any effective control over sales of assault weapons. At the end of that column, Paul Krugman examined where the Republican Party's opposition to sane gun regulation has left us. Quote, in effect, then, the Republican Party decided that a few massacres were an acceptable price to pay in return for tax cuts. I wish that were hyperbole. But the continuing refusal of GOP figures to criticize Trump, even after El Paso, shows that it's the literal truth. Joining our discussion now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Talk about what you identified as the contagion of cowardice. How does that express itself in the Congress, and what are the results?
Well, I think we've always known that courage is contagious, but we're also seeing that so is cowardice. There are any number of my GOP colleagues who will express their private misgivings about the president, about how divisive he is, about how he's tearing down our institutions, but they refuse to speak out about it. They refuse to vote in a way that would put a check on the president. This goes to his racist bile. This goes to common sense gun safety legislation. I mean, the GOP members of Congress understand, just as the Democrats do, it makes no sense to have a system where you can go into a gun store and be turned down because you're a felon and go out and buy that same gun off the back of someone struck perfectly legally. They understand the same facts that we do, but they're unwilling to speak out. They're unwilling to risk an angry tweet. They're unwilling to risk the ire, not even of the NRA members, but the NRA leadership, getting a bad grade from the NRA. And I don't know how to describe that other than a contagion of cowardice. I don't know why they're there, faced with these tragedies, if they're unwilling to do something about it when they know what's right.
I want to ask you about this as a former prosecutor yourself. What changes in law, other than gun regulation, other than banning assault weapons, as California's senior senator was able to do during the 1990s? Dianne Feinstein got that pushed through. What about in prosecutions of cases like this?
Well, I think we should think about having a domestic terrorism statute that parallels the statute basically that bars international terror, the kind that we're used to thinking about in terms of ISIS or al-Qaeda inspired terror, not only to put this on a par, which it should be. We now have about the same number of people killed since 9/11 in these domestic, often white supremacist oriented hate crimes. But also it gives you the ability to prosecute some of the supporting crimes, the providing material support to terror, which would not be available in a domestic terrorism case. It also, I think, gives the same priority and stigma to these crimes as any other form of terrorism. In our bill this year, the Intelligence Authorization Act, we demand an annual report on domestic terrorism. We have been working with the intelligence agencies, the NCTC, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, to find out, are they devoting the resources to this? Are they looking for the trends? Are we thinking about it in the same comprehensive way that we have thought since 9/11 about dealing with the ISIS and al-Qaeda inspired terror?
Domestically, this is primarily, in federal terms, an FBI jurisdiction, and we have reports that 80% of the FBI's attention in this arena is focused on the foreign-inspired terrorist, not the domestic-inspired terrorist.
I think that's right, but I think it's changing. And we heard Director Wray say recently just how many hundreds of domestic terrorism investigations are ongoing right now, and what a growing problem this is. But even while we recognize that a lot of this is domestic in the sense these are homegrown terrorists with a homegrown agenda, they're also influenced by overseas like-minded people. The shooter in Christchurch was influenced in these dark online chat rooms, the same chat rooms that some of the domestic United States have been inspired by. So there is a transnational element to this, in the same way that people have been inspired to act out by ISIS propaganda, even though they weren't under ISIS direction.
So just to clarify for the audience, there are limits to what investigative powers can be used in domestic cases. CIA can't be involved. The NSA can't be eavesdropping on conversations, for example. There is a wall there. There is. But nonetheless, even those agencies can look at the international dynamic, that is, those overseas that are pushing out this kind of white supremacist ideology, which is global in nature. So there is a role even for the intelligence agencies to play. But, you know, many actors like the FBI that have both an international and a domestic terrorist agenda and the lawful authority to investigate, they're going to have to place a much higher priority on this. Can you stay with us after a break? Because I want to ask you